on KSJE.
KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, which is officially baby-friendly. This evidence-based initiative is designed to support mother-baby bonding and optimal infant feeding practices by upholding the 10 steps to successful breastfeeding. San Juan Regional Medical Center, officially baby-friendly, and serving the Four Corners since 1910. Find out more online at sanjuanregional.com.
Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Thursday morning, March the 12th. Good morning, everyone. I'm Scott Micklin. Thank you for tuning in to KSJE 90.9 FM over the air in San Juan County, 103.3 FM over the air in Durango, Colorado, and streaming everywhere from our website, ksje.com. A special good morning also to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program on the KSJE Facebook page and YouTube channel. We are glad that you're with us this morning, everybody. Welcome aboard. Coming up in the next few moments, we are talking economic development with my guest, Arvin Trujillo from Four Corners Economic Development. He is sitting right here getting ready to talk with me about lots of things that are happening in the region, so stay tuned for that. Later on, we'll get a prep sports update with Wally D from Wally D Sports, and of course some big changes at the state basketball tournaments happening in Albuquerque because of concerns over the coronavirus in New Mexico. There's been a lot of changes in the last 24 hours, so we'll get an update on that from Wally D coming up later on this hour at 8:50 a.m. right here on KSJE. Mick Hess is here roving with the arts after the news next hour, 9:06 a.m., and Mick is playing music from three great composers, Barber, Tchaikovsky, and Mahler, on the program today. So join us for that next hour, Roving with the Arts on KSJE. Don't forget, of course, in addition to Facebook and YouTube, you can follow KSJE on Twitter and connect with us on Instagram as well. Our weather forecast, well, it's going to be partly cloudy again today with a chance of rain showers, 61 for a high in Farmington, 44 with some showers overnight. In fact, there's some fog in some of the valley sections of the county this morning, I noticed, on my drive into work. Mostly cloudy skies on Friday with a high of 54 and rain showers and an overnight low of 35 with a chance of rain or snow. Then partly sunny skies on Saturday, the high 55, 33 overnight, mostly sunny and 62 on Sunday, and partly sunny and 63 by Monday. And of course, we always tell you that visual radio can take you places, and we'll take you someplace this morning where things are a little quiet this morning. That's Venice, Italy. And we talk about the coronavirus, a big impact in the country of Italy. Most stores, restaurants, schools, and every place has been ordered closed by the Italian government. And that is a view from a few moments ago of the one of the canals and, of course, the Rialto Bridge there in Venice. 55 degrees, mostly cloudy day in Italy today. The high 56 and the overnight low 49 degrees. But usually it's about maybe 3 o'clock in the afternoon in that scene. It's usually a lot more busy than that when there's not the fear and concern of coronavirus in Italy. Well, let me turn to my guest who is here with me this morning. Arvin Trujillo is here from Four Corners Economic Development. Thank you for coming in.
Good morning, Scott, and good morning to your viewers.
Yes, good to have you with us. And I guess we talked a little bit about coronavirus before we came on the air this morning, and certainly that's concerning to businesses, and the state has taken some action. And so I know your message to folks is to kind of be prepared and to just be smart about this thing.
We just need to be smart about this. We need to be proactive and responsible.
Mm-hmm.
We need to listen to what our health officials say and act accordingly. There's no need to panic about this, but I think being proactive and being responsible on how we conduct our business and what we do in the region will go a long way in helping us making sure that we have a good handle, especially here in the Four Corners area, on this particular disease. And again, it's something that we just need to take notice of and keep vigilant on as we move forward.
You were saying that maybe one of the things that maybe folks are maybe like to complain about may actually work in our favor, and that is our rural and low density of people that live here, which is a lot of reasons why many of us do live here, because we're not elbow to elbow with people like maybe New York or even Albuquerque. May work to our advantage, hopefully, right?
It may, but again, we have people traveling in and out of the region. We just need to be careful about that. Be responsible. If we're not feeling well or we feel under the weather, we should just stay home and keep our distances from folks. And again, I think a lot of this is looking at this real responsibly. I think many of us are watching the news and watching how things are moving forward. As you indicated, the last 48 hours has just been a whirlwind of different activities happening, things happening all the way down from the federal, state, local regions here on how we need to look at our particular areas and what we need to do. And I know in some meetings that I've had the privilege in being in, many of our health officials are really taking the lead on how to begin to prepare for this and respond to this and be ready should we see things happening in terms of that disease showing itself within the region here. So
right, there's been a lot of, I think, multi-level coordination from
yes.
county, state, and cities
right
in the area for
right,
sure,
including Farmington as well as Durango.
That's right. And from the college's standpoint, I will let everyone know, of course, the college announced yesterday that they were going to cancel all events with audiences of over 250 people at college facilities, and certainly that is disappointing for folks, fans of the theater department, the Silhouette series, and the concerts and things like that. But I think the idea is to maybe limit crowds now in hopes to maybe stopping this from spreading in the future and maybe having a less of an impact in the long term.
That seems to be the prudent thing to do at this moment in time.
Right. Well, let's turn to some other topics that I know you're working on, Arvin Trujillo, and that is with Four Corners Economic Development, of course. And you recently invited back one of your speakers who was here not too long ago to give a little update on economics and how the state is doing, correct?
Yes, we invited Rachel Moskowitz with Workforce Solutions back. She was part of three of the main speakers that came and did an economic outlook for 2020.
That was back in January.
That was back in January. And again, what we're seeing are influences that the speaker for Wells Fargo spoke about, saying we're kind of in that range where if something does kind of tip things at one way or the other, we could see some real impacts on our economics, because it was almost as if we wanted to fulfill a prophecy that wanted to happen in terms of the recession. Well, we're seeing that happen right in front of us. But again, what we did is we brought Rachel back to really begin to explore data collection and data development for this region, and she's been very supportive in looking at the Four Corners area, because one thing that we had to educate her on is that really this northwest portion of the state isn't really connected economically to the rest of the state of New Mexico. We're more economically connected to southwest Colorado, southeast Utah, and northeast Arizona. And so we are almost an economic entity unto ourselves. And so
because of our kind of isolation and just because of this is kind of how we kind of have our own little infrastructure up here.
Yes. And again, that plus the fact that really a lot of the metropolitan areas are 4 to 6 hour drives away from the different corners of the state.
Yeah,
and
we're kind of self-sufficient, or we've learned to be over time.
Yes. Yeah. So looking at that, we've been working with her to figure out how do we best look at data collection, and more importantly, how do we begin to educate ourselves in reviewing that data and understanding how to develop goals, how to develop indicators with the data, so we can begin to really measure our successes and possibly areas that we may have gaps or areas that we need to address within the region here. And things that we knew intuitively, but we begin to see numbers looking at the poverty levels in the area, understanding those and how they're connected with the tribes, looking at the educational aspects, different measurements there in terms of dropout rates and the level of education that we're getting, looking at things concerning workforce development. So we're beginning to get a better understanding of that, working with Workforce Solutions. And the real benefit out of our discussions is that she's beginning to work with us more and more. She's better understanding what we're looking at and the economic conditions that are realistic here in this portion of the state. And so she's willing to really begin to look at that, and also our connection with the tribes, because she brought data down that they have available concerning the Jicarilla, the Navajo, the Ute Mountain Ute, as well as the Southern Ute tribes. And how do we help improve the data that we have for these particular tribes looking at the Four Corners region?
Interesting. My guest this morning, Arvin Trujillo, is here. He is the CEO of Four Corners Economic Development. And I would imagine, though, too, that with all the metropolitan statistical areas in our state, ours is the one maybe that kind of stands out because we don't really follow along with maybe the other ones when you think about Albuquerque, Santa Fe, and you have Las Cruces, and maybe even Roswell to a certain degree, and then you have Farmington, San Juan County, and so we're kind of odd man out in some cases.
Well, again, our focuses are different. You looked at those metropolitan areas, but even looking at Cibola and McKinley counties, which are always included when you talk about Northwest New Mexico. But their economic strategies and their economic base is developed around the I-40 corridor.
That's right.
Both the rail and the interstate, which are infrastructure that we don't have available here. And so again, given the miles of separation, you would see almost at the state line from Sheep Springs and from Naize north, a lot of those people come and shop in this area here. They don't go on up to Gallup or Albuquerque or those areas. They come down this way. And as you go to the west, from Kayenta to the east, they all come in this direction.
Right.
And so again, we also see, I mean, all of us see it.
And we're grateful for that, by the way.
No, we are very grateful.
Because of all the benefits it brings, yes.
But you look at the payday, you look at the first of the month, we see a lot of Arizona, we see a lot of Utah, and we see a lot of Colorado plates here in the Farmington area.
Right.
And so again, that gives that's a reflection on where our economic ties lie. And so we're really focused on looking at data and data development and seeing how we can better represent the Four Corners area to help us with decision making, to help us determine where do we put our efforts as we move forward with economic development and community development here in the region.
Right. Excellent. Well, you talked a little bit about the rail line from east to west across our state through the I-40 corridor. Another rail-related issue is that you signed or the county signed a memorandum of understanding with the Navajo Nation about this whole rail idea, correct?
That's correct, and that's been a real milestone at this point. We had both President Nez as well as Vice President Leiser here at the School of Energy, along with the chairman at the San Juan County Commission, Jack Fortner, who were all participated in a signing of an MOU to begin to focus our collective efforts to see what we need to do to bring rail and to look at a petrochemical industry here in San Juan County, in particular in the Navajo Nation portion of the county. So again, that's something we're really looking at. And we also had a number of individuals representing counties and economic organizations from Southwest Colorado who came down and witnessed the signing because they were very supportive of what was happening here. But one thing that really surprised me, Scott, was we put a press release out and we put information out on this particular milestone. And I was looking at just making sure that the region was informed about what we were doing and the milestone that we hit. Well, the Associated Press got hold of the stories that were coming out of this from Farmington and the Durango Herald, and it went nationwide. And we've been getting comments across the nation on what are we doing here, how are we proceeding with this, are we looking at time frames as of yet, and things of that nature. So I was very surprised that how many people out there are really interested in seeing what happens if we do get a rail coming into the Four Corners region here.
Sure.
So again, there's things that we're beginning to see right now, and we're in that planning stage with the Navajo Nation, looking at how we begin to develop an implementation plan, looking at what was developed through the MOU.
And you mentioned this, again, this MOU is very important. I think maybe for other entities maybe that you're talking with or trying to get maybe funding from or planning money from would understand that the tribe is on board with this concept of perhaps getting rail into the region. It's still certainly a long ways off perhaps, and there's a lot of unanswered questions, but it's important to, I guess, demonstrate that the tribe and the non-tribal entities are kind of working together for this common goal.
Well, that's the big thing there, and really the main message coming out of this is that there is a priority, both from the San Juan County side as well as from the Navajo Nation side, saying, yes, this is a priority. We need to take a look at this and really evaluate and more importantly, come up with a proposal. How can we get rail in here? How do we do that? And how do we prepare ourselves to bring this type of proposal before investors so that we can really look at bringing this type of infrastructure into the region? So that's what we're really looking at. And the nation has been supportive of this effort. One thing that we'll need to do and one of the things that we're working on is really putting a communications group together to begin to explain to all our communities, both tribal and non-tribal, what we're doing, how we're proceeding, what are we trying to achieve? Because right now, people are asking us questions, but just like everybody else, we're bringing all the information together. We're starting to figure out how do we want to evaluate this, and then from there begin to determine what is it we want to do and how do we want to proceed.
Right, and you mentioned this petrochemical plant idea, which has also been talked about, and it seems like almost that and the rail idea are kind of tied at the hip a little bit, or joined at the hip, because of the money that this petrochemical plant would provide and the amount of maybe revenue and exports that it would want to do. That maybe would help drive the rail transport.
Well, that's what we're really looking at right now, because as you look at right now with the trade war going on with oil,
right?
We've seen the drop in oil prices
cratered,
down to $20 to $30 a barrel.
Right.
We look at the cost of natural gas now. What we're looking at is focusing on looking at the resources we have available in this region. How can we begin to transform those resources into value-added product that we can then ship out in bulk? And
that's the idea, that this petrochemical plant would use natural gas-related byproducts in their processing.
That's exactly right, because as as we've discussed before, the rail project is not anything new.
Right, we've talked about it forever.
The thing that's always been the stumbling block with that particular development has been the investment of who would own and who would invest in a rail system here. And the big thing there is that in today's dollars, just back of the envelope type calculations, we would figure a rail yard plus 100 miles of rail from here to the I-40 corridor would cost in the range of possibly $300 to $350 million. You know, where do you find that kind of money, and how do you get that investment to pay itself back? What we're looking at now is we've got two commodities, oil and natural gas, whose values are way down, but can we develop value-added product from that? Through a petrochemical process, there are a number of products that could be developed from natural gas. And from doing that, can we then look at that being shipped out? Now, we're looking at a cost of what it would take to invest and plan and build a petrochemical complex. And you're looking in the orders of $6 billion versus $350 million. The economy of scale doesn't even really, there's no conflict between the two. So if you're going to invest and can find good investment in building a $6 billion industry here in the region, rail will follow right behind that. And so now as we get rail and we look at this process going in tandem with the petrochemical piece, now that opens new opportunities and markets for local businesses, local farms, local entrepreneurs to begin to utilize that rail and spread out their customer base across the country for products that we can produce here in the Four Corners region.
Right. Certainly a lot of the studies are talking about some of the add-on benefits, and both for importing and exporting.
Exactly.
Using that rail, but you really do need to have some major good customer that can really drive a lot of this talk, and that's what we're talking about with this petrochemical. And it makes those large, gigantic numbers look a little bit more in scale when you talk about $350 million for a rail line, but you've got a $6 billion potential industry that would use it, and so that kind of makes a little more sense.
It does, plus the fact that one thing that we're focused on are what I call economic-based jobs, meaning those are jobs that bring dollars in. You have a number of employees who are making good wages in the region. And that's what we're looking at in this manufacturing aspect, and begins to diversify our economy. Because in the past, we've had power plants and coal mine operations where we've had thousands of direct jobs in the general Four Corners region. They've been averaging anywhere from, in today's dollars, anywhere from $85,000 to $110,000 a year. We're looking not at that same level, but comparable levels if we can do this. In terms of subcontractors, looking at models that we've seen with this type of development, especially in Western Pennsylvania, they brought in 6,000 contractors to build this type of a complex. And as a result of that, they're anticipating upwards of 600 permanent employees for just the industrial complex. Mm-hmm. That's not including the rail. That's not including the infrastructure and the plants needed to bring the natural gas into the area. That's not including the necessary drilling and operations you would need to bring that natural resource into as feedstock into those processing plants. So you can see how that trickle-down effect would really begin to enhance our economic development efforts, as well as diversify our economy, looking at the future for this region here.
Right, and the idea why we're talking petrochemical is because that's connection to natural gas, and that's
Yes.
what we have an abundance of still here in this basin.
Exactly.
And there you go.
Exactly.
Very good. Let me ask you about a couple other things, Arvin, here this morning. One is, I know we talked a lot about broadband, and the city has talked about broadband, Farmington, as a way of economic diversity and maybe offering things for some of these folks who don't maybe need to work in a specific location, these location-neutral jobs that people are talking about. And if we have better broadband connectivity, you can maybe have somebody sitting in a house in Farmington, New Mexico, or Aztec, New Mexico, or wherever, that's working on some major projects, but they have the speed and the support of the internet backbone to do this type of work. And so there's some news there, correct?
Yes. In the past, we've talked about looking at that particular aspect. How do we look at broadband development? How do we look at what we call last mile, which is actually connecting internet services to businesses and homes? How do we look at that with San Juan County? And what we discovered was that there's really no plan for the county in place on how we can put this infrastructure into existence here. But we've started now with an ad hoc committee, and we've brought individuals from the different municipalities and even from the Navajo Nation to begin to look at the county as a whole, to begin to start developing a process by which we can start planning out how we would really initiate a plan to bring middle mile to the full county. I mean, we talked about it here with the virus.
Right.
The possibility of schools being closed and they doing schoolwork online. There are areas within the county where you don't have that capability of tapping into the internet in order to do online classwork.
Right. That is a concern. That is a concern here at the college. That's true.
And there are other areas that are of concern because we don't have full coverage across the county. Well, we've got an ad hoc committee that's beginning that work now to begin to look at how we can develop a plan for San Juan County. We're starting to initiate our efforts with Southwest Colorado, looking at a fiber optic line that would connect La Plata, Montezuma counties and Southwest Colorado and San Juan County, developing a loop in the region here that would help enhance redundancy and bring more speed into the region here. And like I said, as we develop the San Juan County planning piece, how do we connect into that loop so that we begin to expand our capabilities throughout the region? And again, that's been something that people need to understand. When we talk about San Juan County, we're not just talking about Aztec, Bloomfield, Farmington, Kirtland, and the surrounding areas. You have to remember that the county goes from Shiprock all the way down to Sheep Springs, from Nyeezy all the way to Bloomfield. And so all that region of the Navajo Nation also are looking for broadband capabilities, and they want to have that infrastructure in place. And so again, that's where we're partnering with the Navajo Nation to begin to look at how do we begin to do that. We have a number of internet service providers in the area. How do we work with them? How do we work with our governments in order to develop a plan that we can begin to figure out how do we then implement that plan to get the necessary coverage throughout the county?
Right, and that's probably part of the challenge would be working with those internet service providers, because I would imagine it's maybe not as cost effective to invest in some of this stuff in a more rural area than it is maybe in a more densely populated area like we've talked about this morning. And so it probably needs some incentives to these companies to maybe do some of that, or another entity to come in and do it instead of them if they don't want to.
Well, again, that's where the strategy and the discussions need to come into play, because again, what we're seeing right now is that there's a lot of discussion at the federal level looking at bringing in new dollars to help with infrastructure development in the areas. There's also been a real focus on coal-related communities, on how do you help those communities diversify their economies to begin to dig themselves out of basically situations where power plants and mining operations that have been the bedrock of their economic development for decades has now transitioned, or in some cases is gone. How do you begin to rebuild those economies within those particular regions? And so looking at those opportunities, if we can begin to get these plans in place and have these plans ready to go, there's real opportunities for us to take advantage of that looking into the future.
Very true. Before we run out of time, Arvin Trujillo, a news story that broke just last evening about the movie industry in San Juan County, and more details have been released about Tota Studios, the county announcing they are going to buy the Tota Theater in downtown Farmington, run it in conjunction with the city, but that would give maybe some office space or production space for some of these movie projects, and then also look for a backlot for maybe a Middle Eastern type village and things along that line. All of this to kind of build on the state's embracing of the movie industry. And of course, the state is helping with $1.5 million to do it.
You know, that's really big news looking at what we're doing. And we've got a lot of capable individuals here in the county who are working specifically on those areas and figuring out how do we begin to do this, what opportunities do we have, and how do we coordinate our efforts here in the county. We've been playing a role in that and working with the city and working with the different entities, with the different individuals here in the region here, as well as in New Mexico. And again, our aspects have been looking at the role that we would play. Farmington has really made the push on this. And again, there are possible opportunities of looking with the Navajo Nation also, because there's a lot of locations on the Navajo Nation that people are looking at. So there's more and more interest coming to the Four Corners area, especially areas where they can make local shoots. And again, it's a matter of bringing the right individuals, bringing the right resources together so we can take advantage of those opportunities. So we're looking forward to seeing what happens and what transpires with that whole effort.
Definitely, but exciting details.
It is.
That were released for sure, so wonderful. Arvin Trujillo, thanks for coming in this morning.
You bet.
Always good to see you.
We'll see you next month, Scott. Hopefully we'll have more news to share with you.
All right, sounds good. Thank you very much. It's Arvin Trujillo, everyone. He is the CEO of Four Corners Economic Development, my guest here on KSJE. And the time right now is coming up on 8:39.
KSJE is supported by the University of Denver Graduate School of Social Work Four Corners program. They're proud to offer a Master's of Social Work degree in the Four Corners community. Applications for the 2020-2022 cohort is now open. Classes are taught Fridays and Saturdays in Durango, Colorado. Find out more at 970-247-9773 or at du.edu/social